No fee guarantee, no risk guaranteed. Guess what? That's how every ad starts that's just about to be followed by BS. Life has risks and you don't get guarantees. And trying something new means that there's going to be a cost. As a real estate investor, you should be thinking about change and considering, wow, what if I do that next thing? But you have to be real about it and you have to count the cost. How do you do that? How do you move forward in spite of uncertainty? Well, Kristi and I are going to talk about that in our next episode of the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. How you can take change in stride and not go broke doing it.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. I'm Kristi Candle, your co-host. I'm a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to become developers in their own community. And I'm joined with my co-host, Erik Stimbakken.
Hey, that's me, real estate investor. Also worn a few other hats in my life. And that is kind of what we're going to talk about today, is the cost of reinvention. We recorded one a while back about when is it the right thing to do, to change, to move forward, to pivot, whatever we want to call that. But it seems easy on the outside. Wow, they just took and they just moved from this to this other thing over here, and now they're off to the races. It's very akin to that old saying, the grass is always greener on the other side. And that is, well, that's the truth. That's a myth, actually, that we want to bust with the truth, is that reinvention costs. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Sometimes the dues that you have to pay to be in that club is totally worth it, but you shouldn't think that it's just easy or that there is no cost to it. So, Kristi, can you think of a time when you've made change and you're like, wow, okay, and what some of those costs were?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to, I've always been an entrepreneur, but 2015, when I started my first company, I worked with developers in California. And I was making well into six figures and I had those golden handcuffs. And I decided, you know what? My why and my future was so different than where I was at right then that it was worth giving that up. And I literally bought an SUV and I laid in the back of 3 different ones before I landed on the one I picked and went, hey, if this doesn't work, I could sleep in the back. And it's fine. I won't be homeless on the street. I'll be homeless in my car. And it really was a big leap of faith to go, am I betting on myself? Am I truly going all in on this? And the answer was yeah, because enough things lined up and my why and my purpose had changed where I'm like, I have to bet on me. And if it means risking it all, it means risking it all. I can always go back, but I can't change what I never took action on.
Right. Well, I understand a little bit about change. I moved 19 times, and that was before I moved here to Colorado 22 years ago.
I thought I moved a lot, honestly, until I met you. And I'm like,
yeah,
I think you've got me beat.
Change was a constant in my life. And as I was growing up, that's just the way it was. I didn't have an opinion about it because I just thought that's just what happens. And a lot of the people around me, I was an Army brat. That was everyone around me changed and moved all the time. And to them, it was normal too. You could like it or not like it, but that's the way the world worked. And I took that into my professional world. Yeah, I started college. I'm not even going to tell you how many times I changed majors while I was there. Let's just say I graduated with a teaching degree and then did a graduate degree. Then I was going to be a teacher, and I had already taught high school, already taught college writing, and then I took a job in public relations. Like, oh, okay, well, let's just shift gears over there. And then when I left that, I went into freelance marketing. I ran a little agency. I was a co-operator of that, a partnership, and I left that and became a freelance editorial photographer. That was back in the days when they had these things called magazines. They were made out of paper. You could buy them. You could buy them in a store, or they would mail them to you. It was crazy. And they had lots of pictures in them, and they used to pay photographers. That is a thing of the past. And I moved to a transition to become a commercial photographer. And what that means is mostly business to business, B2B stuff. I'd work for ad agencies and corporations and stuff like that, sharing like, hey, this is our wonderful product. This is what it looks like. This is what it'll make your life look like. This is what our location looks like, etc. Then I was like, oh, wow, the pictures are starting to move. I better get with it. And video was everywhere. And I was like, okay, I really need to learn this. And so I leaned into video production, had a partnership, developed that, ended up moving from that. And along during this time as a photographer and videographer, we got into long-term rentals and then into short-term rentals. And now I'm not sure what is next for me, but change has always cost something, right? It is always giving something up and going on to the next thing. What's your take on that, Kristi?
That just reminded me. So I say I live in two places, and I do. I live in Southwest Florida, and I, in theory, go back to Lake Tahoe and I snowboard in the winter. And if I think about where I've been since 2020, I have been traveling the country for the past 5 years. And it's very normal for me to live a nomad life for 4 to 6 months of that year. And this is the very first year where I feel a different tug inside and I go, but I found my community. I found my people. I don't want to leave them. And it's very interesting because people have said, oh, I'm going to live vicariously through you. And I'm like, yeah, it's great to be able to go do all of that, but it's also lonely, and it's also you're constantly uprooting your life. So there's, like you said, there's very much a cost to what it takes if you're going to have change. So I think no matter when we look and we compare ourselves to anyone else, the grass is always greener on the other side, and it's what price are you willing to pay for what phase of your life that you're at. Hey, can we talk business for a second? If you've been flipping houses or running short-term rentals, you already know how to hustle. You know how to spot opportunity, add value, and make a property work harder. But if we're being honest, flipping gets exhausting, and short-term rentals are definitely not passive. So what's next? For a lot of people I work with, the answer is real estate development. I'm talking about turning a vacant lot into a quadplex, or bringing a rundown building back to life as a mixed-use space. I'm Kristi Candle, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. And now I host the Local Real Estate Developer podcast to help locals like you do the same. We pull back the curtain and show you what it takes to go from flipper or host to local developer. If you're ready to build something bigger, this podcast is for you. Check out the Local Real Estate Developer podcast on all platforms.
That's right. And I just think that, unfortunately, because I worked with marketing for years, okay, is that marketing wants to tell you that really the only cost is some dollars. It always costs you more than you think it is. But no, it always costs you something else, because if you have read, I believe it's The Millionaire Next Door, that you're trading your life for money, and you're trading your money for stuff. And that is, and I hope I got that book citation right, but that is what's happening. You're trading your life for stuff. And we always want to think that there's no cost to it. See, we watch stuff on social media and we think that's pretty easy. I've got a friend of mine, his wife is a travel blogger, and they're good people. Okay. I will say that travel bloggers, not my cup of tea. Don't really follow any except for him and his wife. And there's wonderful pictures, all over Italy and Spain. And they took almost a year and just traveled the world. But I know, because I know my friend Matt, and I know when they have to get up to get those pictures. Like, they are up before anyone is up. Some of these are long exposures because the sun's not even up yet. The sun's not up yet, okay? And they're making arrangements for some of these opportunities a year in advance. And we see the pretty picture, we think, I would like to have that, but I'm not going to pay the price. I'm not getting up at what time to do that? You got to be kidding me. It's like, yeah, but if you want that, I've got some other friends who are nature photographers, and that's kind of where I first learned this. I'm like, you get up at when? And you what? And it's what's the temperature? And you're going to be sitting in a pond, before the light comes out, and to get that picture. Like, I don't want to pay that price. And so this is what this podcast is about here, is, do you want to pay the price that change will take? And let's not forget, if you've ever read any in the Bible, even Jesus said, hey, before you decide you want to follow me, you need to count the cost. You need to sit down and say, what's this going to cost me? And you'd think if anything was ever free, right, it would be a grace. I'll just receive the grace for free. No, from Jesus' own mouth, it's like, you need to count the cost, because everything has a cost. And in real estate, I'll tell you what, I'll try to get off my soapbox here without staying on it too long. Everybody who's pitching you a course or pitching you an investment, pitching you a thing, they will make it sound like there's virtually no cost, almost no risk. And those things are just not true. Now, I'm not here to put anybody down or to throw shade on anyone in particular. I'm just saying, as a generality, you don't buy something unless you think it's going to be easy, right? There's just an easy button, and that's what I'm going to get. And no such thing.
Very, very true. So when we do think about change and reinventing ourselves when it comes to what's next, it normally comes from a couple different things, whether You just hit a wall and you're burnt out. Honestly, that's why I started my company, because I hit a burnout wall. But it can also come from boredom. It could come from the fact that you just feel this deep calling and purpose and you're like, I need to go do this. Or it could be that your life is so chaotic that you go, I can't deal with this anymore. I have got to just, something has got to give. And then that's when you realize that everything else that you had in your toolkit, everything else that used to work doesn't anymore. And
Right.
now it's broken and now it's time to take the next step. So what are some examples of when you knew you hit that wall and you're like, it's time to reinvent?
Wow. Okay. So one of them, I was at my first and only real job. I had a desk in an office and they told me when I had to be at work and what I had to wear and when I could leave and things like that. That to me now sound like sheer insanity. Okay.
Sounds like a jail cell.
It was actually a job. It wasn't a terrible job. And it was with people that I liked. But I realized one day, it was in a meeting, somebody said something, and I realized this is it. This is going to be the end of the road for me. Now, this isn't judging anyone else, but I realized, wow, if I stay here, that's it. Like that's going to be the end. And right then I was like, no way, no how can I do that? Because we've all seen this. We've seen people at work where they stay way longer than they should have. Mm-hmm. They get bitter, they get cynical. Yep. They're just going through the motions, barely doing enough to not get fired. And I realized I don't want to be the bitter person. I don't want to be the person who's phoning it in. I don't want to be any of those things. And so I had to leave. And I was driven by passion to do something else. And I said, okay, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make photography work. I really, really, really want to do this. So for me, I was willing to do the uncertainty. We took out student loan. My wife was in school, but her schooling was so low cost that we could get by on a pretty low income. And our costs were so low. Mortgage, buying our house, I think was under $600 a month. Now, also minimum wage, I want to say was right around $4 an hour at that time. But basically we had that cost and I said, we're willing to pay it. Now, that came at a time when we were younger. We had more options. We were like, okay, if this doesn't work, we'll just do something else. And this is my encouragement to people who are younger and at a more resilient place is go for it. Absolutely go for it. Okay, just do that. There's going to be a cost, but your cost is lower earlier. And to those who are invested in a mortgage, in the family, and all this other stuff, I'm not saying don't try something, but you need to do the math, right? You need to sit down and figure this out. Is this really a thing that I can do, that I should do? And can I start it incrementally? That's the topic of another podcast or another book, but doesn't mean you shouldn't do it and you shouldn't pay the price, but you should probably do that a little slower, a little more safely. So for me, it was driven by passion. And the cost was a lot of, frankly, insecurity. We had to really pace ourselves. And I guess this is a place to put it. And I will say this here, I don't talk about this a lot, but people is like, oh yeah, you must, since you got into real estate investing and blah, 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 blah. We owned 7 properties, including the one that we live in, before we ever bought a new vehicle. Okay. And then when we did, it was a Toyota. So for the folks who are like, oh, you just do all that, is like, you know what? There's a cost. And I'm not moaning about that. Okay. To be really clear about that, I'm simply saying that was a choice and that was a cost and that was a price we were willing to pay. And there's a lot of other folks who are like, nope, I'm going to go ahead and get the Corvette, the Ferrari, the Rolex, whatever. And I don't even have one house, but I want to look like I have a dozen houses. Hey, that's okay. If you want to do that, cheers, So that was cost for us. There was some insecurity in the beginning. So yeah, we lived on student loans for a couple of years. We took out 1 year's worth of loan and lived on it for a while. And then, paid it back as we could, as we got better opportunities and better cash flow. But, there's always a cost. When we shifted from long-term into short-term rentals, the cost there is in time. It's just, I get more calls on short-term rentals than I do long-term rentals, just straight up.
100%.
There should be no surprise to anybody who's involved in either one of these things. But that's a cost, and it's a cost we were willing to pay. We said, okay, fine. For where we are right now in our career, in our world, in our whatever, we're willing to pay that cost. I am co-host of this podcast because education is my calling. That's also why I developed a course on short-term rentals. It's called STR in an Hour, and it's perfect for busy professionals. It's a lot of content packed into 1 hour. No fluff, no upsell, It's an overview of STRs from A to Z, everything from how to choose a property to how to estimate income and expenses. It's literally the best and most content I could pack into 59 minutes. With over 4,000 nightly stays in my own STRs, I've learned important lessons, and I want to share them with you. Link with more information in the show notes.
No, those are really great points. Some of the costs, so like you touched on financial costs. I know for me personally, letting go of some revenue streams because I was realigning the businesses and companies that I'm doing. That sucks when you drastically reduce your income on purpose. Then what was interesting for me is the emotional cost that came. So I'm 20 years into real estate development, and it was crazy when I switched and I started to go down different pathways, the imposter syndrome that came back. And really it was, when I think about it, it was, I had lost my identity. I didn't know who I was in this next realm of things. And then, of course, you're afraid that people are going to judge you. Now, like, clearly, I am trying to now be on camera and talking and out there. So now there's more eyeballs on me and there's more people judging. And when you, like, at first, when that all sinks in and you just let it be so heavy or so much or be so important, it's a lot. And then it's a lot of reframing within yourself that you're like, hold on, I switched gears for a purpose and a why that was different. People don't necessarily understand my why at that time or why I would leave something so safe to go do it. But I did it for a reason. And when I reminded myself of that reason, then the imposter syndrome, then the fear of being judged, then all of that went away because the end goal is if I can positively impact even one life from these new ventures and this new path, then that was worth it. So then all of that can kind of be put into perspective, but it's not easy. It is definitely not easy. And that's right now,
No, it's a real cost. It is a real cost. When I left my day job and desk job and people would say, what do you do? I'd say, well, and what I did back then is I did marketing materials, but I had a plan. See, I had a plan to do marketing materials. And then I was in year one. I didn't even know about business plans. Right? I have taken no business classes. I think I would have liked them, but anyways, I hadn't. And so I said, okay, so people make plans. All right. So in year one, I'm going to do about 30%. Making marketing materials for other places because I knew how to do publishing, right? I could manage I could art direct the whole thing, hire photographers, hire writers, hire publishers, make all this stuff happen. You could go from an idea like, I did this for a whole university. Like, well, we got to tell the world about what we do. Okay, I know how to make that happen. And so I could do all their print materials, and I did that. So I said, okay, I'll do 30% of that the first year, 30% just writing, freelance writing, because that was my background, and 30% photography, which was my new thing. But then the next year, I want to do 50% photography, 25% the marketing, 25% writing. And then the third year, I want to do, I don't know what it was, 75% photography. And then the other things were combined, and I was going to just wean those things off until I was 100% photography. So I did that. And I did that for a lot of years as a photographer, although switching types of photography that I did. And then when I decided, somewhere in that path, people would say, what do you do? Like, I do, it's a long story, right? Which business card should I give you? And when I could actually tell them I was a photographer, I started to develop an identity in that. And when it came time to real estate investing, like at some point in the probably 5, 7, 8, 10, no, it was actually more than 10 years into real estate investing, I realized, wait a minute, I'm gonna have to switch gears. And when people would say, what do you do? Just saying the words, I'm a real estate investor, just came out like, fraud. No, I'm a real estate investor. Not a fraudulent real estate investor, but I just, to Kristi's point is like, I felt like that wasn't real. I felt it wasn't true. And I had an identity. I was retiring and it was hard. Okay. Like I have presented to international groups about marketing photography. Like I was kind of the guy, the pro from Dover. Yeah. And I had worked very hard to earn that. And I knew my things. And then to go into real estate investing, that was hard. And when I was studying for my real estate license here in Colorado, and I'm sitting down, I'm studying this stuff that like everyone else around me is a couple of decades younger taking this test. And I'm sitting down at a computer at a place I've never been to take a test. And that takes a toll on your ego, right? It takes a toll on your ego and on you, because at the same time, you're relinquishing this other identity that you've spent a long time building, and you're taking on a new one that is difficult, and you are the newbie, right? And that can stop enough people to be like, nope, I'd rather be mediocre where I am than to be the beginner in the new place. That's a bad trade, right? I'm just going to
That
tell you right
is.
now.
And okay, so you've dialed in the cost, but let's tell them why they should actually take the action. How do you know when it's the right move? I think you have a handful of tools that people can go through and go, huh, maybe it is time for me to reinvent myself. Maybe that cost is worth it.
Yeah, so I jotted some of those things down. One is, am I running from something or toward something? And I will tell you that fear is a really excellent short-term motivator. Step on a snake, you could run the 50 meters or maybe even fly them,
I would fly.
which I've seen happen. But guess what? It doesn't get you to run a marathon. It just can't. So running toward something, your why, is vastly more important than fear-based action. Fear can be a good short-term motivator. Go ahead and use it, but it's not a good long-term motivator. So you need to find what you are moving toward, because you will have that problem. Whatever the problem is, I don't know what your problem is going to be, but you're going to hit one. And you have to have your eyes on the prize way in the distance and keep your eyes on that to get through the problems and difficulties that you'll have between here and there. And if you're only running from something behind you and then you realize, well, I'm far enough away from that, it's not going to bite me now, you'll quit running. So one of the questions to ask yourself is, does this still reflect who I am now? It was funny, I was talking to a neighbor and we were talking about changing careers and stuff like this. And he's a retired veterinarian. And he said, yeah, you know what? I decided I was going to do this other thing because I wasn't going to let some 19-year-old kid tell me what I had to do for the rest of my life. And it took me a second to realize, oh, he was talking about himself. Well, yeah, maybe you have changed. And why would you let the you of 10 years ago tell you who you have to be today, right? You don't owe that person of the past really anything. Ask yourself also, will I regret not trying this? Whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, and then you look back and you go, wow, I could have done that, but I didn't. That's no bueno. A good question to ask yourself, is this fear telling me no or prudence telling me no? And if you want to know the difference between fear and prudence, go back and listen to our podcast. We unpack that whole thing. It's the fear podcast. Prudence is the thing, the smart part of your brain saying, you know what, actually, that will kill you. Don't jump off that thing, right? And fear is just saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And you realize, wait a minute, it's 3 feet, it's into warm water, and I'm wearing a life jacket. I can handle this, right? So ask yourself, is it fear or prudence? Another thing to ask yourself, because we all do this, is we got our heroes, and we say, I want to do what so-and-so does, whatever it is, but you don't know what game they're playing, and you don't know what costs they are paying behind the scenes. Now, I went to a photography workshop once years ago, and in that photography workshop, I got to see behind the scenes of a lot of very famous photographers. And I know for a fact that anyone who's listening to this, I know you have seen the photographs that these people I met had made. I know this. Unequivocally, you've seen dozens and dozens, because there were lots of very famous photographers at this workshop. But I got to see the price some of them paid for that fame. Now, I'm not evaluating whether it was a price they should have paid or that I would pay. That's not my point. My point is, I saw a price for the first time that I had assumed wasn't there. So sometimes you have to ask yourself, am I willing to pay the price?
So as we go to wrap this up, what would you kind of be some things that people can take away? So we've talked about the cost, we've talked about the reasons why. What do you want our audience to take away from this?
Well, I want to give you a few practical hows, right? So we've talked about how to think about this, but the world was never impacted by the things you only thought about. They're impacted by the things you did. So if you're deciding, you know what, I will pay that price. I've thought about this. Here are about 6 points that I think will help you move forward. 1, have enough runway. And the more you have at risk, the longer runway you need. It's a simple thing. If you've got a Cessna, it just doesn't take very much runway, right? But if you've got a 787, you got to have a lot of runway. Same thing. If you've got a mortgage and 3 kids and you're making payments on 2 different houses already, you need runway before you just say, I'm going to try this new thing. Well, okay, get some runway. Next, have some support. Whether that's your spouse, your peers, online support, wherever you get that, you need actual, real-time support and help. Not just people who say, yay, good job, but people who will say, oh, that really stings. Can I sit with you for a little bit? You need to have an attitude that says there's no way out but through. Okay, once you've committed to the thing, maybe it's just a certain dollar amount. Maybe it's a time amount. Maybe it's a certain number of reps amount. Whatever it is, I don't say to do this till you die, right? But set your goals realistically and then say, there's no way out but through. I am going to do this. I'm going to take this test all the way through and see if this is for me, which is related to my next one. Date the process, but you don't have to marry it. You try it out and it's like, well, if that worked out great, then okay, move on. That's all right. When you're in the midst of taking on these new things, strong habits help because everything is going to be swirling around you and everything's in change and you're going to feel like everything is in chaos. This is where you need to have really strong habits. I sat down and went through my 20 I choose/I am statements just today to remind myself, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. And I'm tracking my habits because when everything else is chaos, you have to have some good, solid habits to rely on. Another, be willing to be the newbie, right? Just be willing to be the beginner in the room.
Suck at something and to feel like the imposter and to be like, I don't know it all and I'm going to figure it out. And it's going to be uncomfortable and it's still fine.
If you're willing to do that, you will make progress so much faster than the ones who sit in the back of the classroom and they're too cool for school and they will not ask any questions. Not because they know it all, it's because they don't want to look like they don't know it all. And so you go ahead, raise your hand and say, hey, I don't understand this. Could you explain this to me? Could you help me through this? And people will. And here's a bonus one. Don't be afraid to say no. There's a time when you get to that and you say, you know what? I did try the thing. I worked through the process. I had support. I thought about it. I tried it. I had habits. I gave it the time it was allocated. And this isn't for me. And you know what? That's okay. That's not failing. That's one step closer to the success. And this is really important and kind of my closing point is that the person you become in this process is more important than the thing you accomplish as you do the process. The process is so important. Count your costs, be rational about this, but at the same time, you've got to move. You have got to move because doing the things is what changes the things. And there is no substitute for that.
Such fire. And that is why we have the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, because we want to share the good, the bad, the truth, the ups and downs of all facets of growth in life and real estate investing. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, if you could please like and subscribe. We're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all your podcast platforms. And if you do leave comments, that helps us reach a broader audience. So thanks again, guys. Again, this is the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing.